I'm Dr. Marquina, and I have Dr. Cherry with me today. We're with USA Laser Biotech, and today we want to introduce our family of lasers. We have two families. The Lumix family, that many of our customers know about, the Lumix 2 and the Lumix 250, and the new one is called the Nexus Lite family of lasers. As you probably know, our company was founded back in 2001, and our focus was biostimulation. In fact, we excel in building lasers specifically designed for biostimulation. But today I'm excited about the introduction of the Nexus Lite because we have capitalized our expertise on biostimulation lasers to extend to the new family, the Nexus Lite. In fact, the Nexus Lite, we call it the hybrid because it also biostimulation lasers, and I want Anton to elaborate a little bit more on why we call it hybrid, being a dual function laser. Anton?
Yes, Nelson. One of the advantages about being the leaders in high intensity laser systems is that we had the existing technology to produce very high peak power systems. This new system line are all class 4 systems. They have higher average powers, which allows us to carry out wide area applications, in the case when there's a surgical need to carry out soft tissue surgery as well.
Anton, you mentioned class 4. Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about the classification of lasers? In particular, you mentioned also surgical interventions. So even though all of them are biostimulation, the new laser being a hybrid, it can, in addition to that, because of the high average power, it can do the surgical intervention, right? Is that correct?
Absolutely. Average power really translates into how much thermal activity you can get out of a beam. By applying our patented surgical probe system to this particular model, we're able to carry out cutting with the probe. Now, that's not its only function though, Nelson. By including a physical medicine handpiece that has a focusing handpiece to it, we're able to diffuse that beam and provide a wide area class 4 laser application that's purely biostimulation as well.
I like that, very good point, because here the Lumix 2 obviously has a smaller aperture. So because of the high peak power, like this is 45 watts, so a very high peak power, so you're seeing that this has high depth of penetration, right? So it's highly focused, and that's what it excels with. Now this one you're saying is a larger beam spot, and because of the high average power can cover larger areas, is that what it is?
Absolutely. This system, although it can't cut at all, actually is about 10 times more powerful than the average surgical system. There's a cost to that though. To run the peak power very high, the average power is fairly low, so we can't get thermal cutting aspects with it. The hybrid system, on the other hand, is able to generate the average powers that can provide a very wide area application without it being thermal, or via a different probe head, provide a dense beam that's very thermal and cuts quite well.
So Anton, then let me just recap what you're saying now. I'm hearing that we have the Lumix, the high intensity pulse lasers, right? We have the Lumix 2 and the Lumix 250. The 250, of course, has a much higher average power than this one. But in both cases, there's a single function. They're only for biostimulation, even though the Lumix 250 is a large, very powerful machine. It's designed specifically for biostimulation. High performance, where this is less expensive, the 250 will be a high performance laser. In fact, the Lumix 2 and the Nexus Lite 7 watt and 10 watt, they're really basically the same price. If they're the same price and this is only for biostimulation and it has a dual function, what's the difference? Why would I buy the Nexus Lite versus the Lumix 2?
I think that's a great question. It really comes down to practice demand. What is it that we're looking for out of the practice? In a case, let's take a surgical case for example. If somebody has a pre-existing surgical laser in their office already, they may want to focus on dedicated laser systems. Also, if you're a practitioner where surgery is not a function that you need to have in physical therapy, chiropractic, and fields that are non-surgical in nature, dedicated biostimulation systems are actually excel at that particular function.
What I want to do now is really compare side by side. We're going to talk about the Lumix 2 and the Nexus Lite 7 watt, 10 watt. Compare the side by side differences and similarities. So let's start with the first pair actually, so we can compare side by side. By the way, the price is exactly the same. So the obvious question is, if we have been building the Lumix biostimulation laser for so many years, and that was our flagship product, why did we build a new family of lasers, this Nexus Lite. So let's contrast the two of them between the Lumix 2 and the Nexus Lite 7 watt and 10 watt. Anton?
Thank you, Nelson. I think one of the most important characteristics of a laser and the sophistication of the technology we're talking about here is the peak power. As Nelson mentioned, the Lumix family has very high peak power systems, this being 45 watt and the 250 being a 250 watt peak power system. To put this in context, a 45 watt peak power system is about 10 times more powerful than the average surgical system. The 250 is about 50 times more powerful than an average surgical system. So we have a lot of very advanced, very sophisticated technology that we work with. What we did is we brought the peak power down and raised the average power up and created the Nexus Lite family. This allows for a couple distinct advantages. The system now is able to create a very powerful beam that through our diffusing head can be applied to wide area applications. And additionally, when there's a need for soft tissue surgery, by simply connecting our surgical adapter, we can carry out high-grade surgical applications.